Unless you have Travis Kelce or Darren Waller, you're probably trying to figure out which tight end to start for your Week 13 fantasy lineup. Luckily, we got SI fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano with us with his start and sit for the tight end position. Let's start with the guys that you want in your lineups, Fabs.
And let's go with TJ Hawkinson. And he's not putting up huge numbers, Bill, but he's putting up pretty good numbers. He's averaging nearly 12 fantasy points per game this season, which is very good considering the state of the position right now. He scored 9 or more fantasy points in all but one game, and he's got the Bears this week. And you may think, well, that's a bad matchup. It's actually the opposite that's true. They've allowed 8 touchdowns and an average of more than 15 fantasy points per game in tight ends. And Hawkinson had over 16 points against them back in week 1. So start TJ this week. And then this one might surprise you. Jonnu Smith, I get it. He stunk last week. He had a goose egg. Okay, so you're probably rage dropping him at this point. But hopefully you keep him on your roster. Remember, the NFL is a week-to-week league. He's got the Browns this week. Their defense has allowed 8 touchdowns and the second most fantasy points to tight ends. And the position has scored 10-plus points 9 times against Cleveland. So forgive and forget with Jonnu. I'm not saying he's an elite tight end, but he's a startable tight end in Week 13.
Some other tight ends, you got Austin Hooper from the Browns in that same game against Jonnu Smith. And then Robert Tonyan of the Packers, who had another touchdown grab from Aaron Rodgers in Week 12. That combination certainly seems to be clicking. Let's move over to the tight ends that you don't think should be in lineups this week, Fabs. Who are you sitting?
Noah Fant is a tough guy to sit because he's always got the potential to put up pretty good numbers. But last week, I mean, he did next to nothing. Of course, Denver was starting a practice squad wide receiver at quarterback. It is what it is. But also, look at his numbers. He's failed to score 10 or more fantasy points in each of his last 4 games and 7 of his last 8 overall. That includes a Week 7 game against this week's opponent, the Chiefs, where he was held to fewer than 7 points. So if you start him, I would temper expectations. He's likely a low-end tight end 1. And then Logan Thomas, who I really liked last week against my beloved but pitiful Dallas Cowboys, and he did very well. And Thomas scored 10-plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. He scored double digits in 4 of his last 6 games overall. I'm still fading him. Why, Bill? Steelers. Pittsburgh has allowed just 1 touchdown to a tight end going into Week 12, and the position is averaging 8 points per game against them. So you do not start tight ends against the Steelers, so Logan Thomas is a fade for me.
We got plenty more start and sit analysis that you can find by going to si.com/fantasy. Fab's also going to release his PPR rankings for Week 13 that you can also check out at Sports Illustrated.